It's basically just a lifted minivan at this point.
Stop it. We're not saying that on camera.
Today we're going to talk about 5 things you need to consider before you pull the trigger and buy a Toyota Sequoia. We'll use my car as the example. As you can tell, the Sequoia has had quite a bit of work done to it since we got it. We just threw on the tandem off-road sliders all the way around. We threw on 35s with a lift with JBA upper control arms. We did chrome deletes on the side mirrors and the door handles. We threw on the Alpha Rex Pro headlights, which make a huge difference at night. And finally, we just threw on the Victory 4x4 roof rack plus OVS 270 awning. We like our Toyota Sequoia a lot. Do I love this car? No. If you're a big fan of taking your overland vehicle off-roading onto really difficult trails, this is not the rig for you. You would be better suited getting a Land Cruiser, GX470, maybe even a 4Runner if you don't need all that space, if you want to stick in the Toyota family. If you're looking for this vehicle to be your family cruiser, to get you to and from the trails, while not doing anything too difficult or too hard, then this car is probably the perfect rig for you. So that brings us to our very first item to consider. It's the double wishbone suspension, front and rear. Independent rear suspension, independent front suspension. That's a big limiter on the capability of this giant rig. And to see more about it, we'll go under the rig. That's right, folks. The second gen Sequoia does not have a solid rear axle. Mind-blowing, I know. Double wishbone suspension is great for sports cars, but off the road, it has some major limitations, in particular, wheel lift. If you search for Toyota Sequoia videos on YouTube, you're going to see a ton of these rigs three-wheeling everywhere. And that's because the double wishbone suspension, or the A-arms in the rear, don't really allow the rear axle to articulate all too much, which forces the front tires of the rig up in the air. Now, if you're used to that kind of stuff, then that's fine. But if you're used to a rig being a little bit more planted on the trail and doing a little bit of more gnarlier of stuff, this is not going to be the rig for you. Reason number 2, don't get a Platinum. The Platinum Sequoias come with airbags in the rear, air suspension in the rear. And there are so many companies out there that make air suspension delete kits for Toyotas all across the board. GX470s, GX460s, Land Cruisers. Now there are airbag delete kits for the Toyota Sequoia, but they don't come with a lift. So once you remove the airbag, you're kind of stuck at stock height. Stupid crow. Ooh. But when you're off-roading and abusing and putting these things in really harsh elements, it's just an air bladder that's vulnerable and can leak and can go out on you. Don't get a Platinum. Get something like a Limited or even an SR5 in a higher trim level. Reason number 3, rust. Second gen Sequoias, for some reason, love to rust. I don't know what it is, what Toyota was thinking when they made these cars. I've had a GX470, I've had a 4Runner, and this by far is the most rusted out Toyota I've ever owned. If you live in California and you're buying a California car, this probably doesn't apply to you. But if you're in any of the other states, rust is a big deal. These things love to rust. There are so many posts online about people asking for other people's advice of, hey, is this too much rust? Is this too much rust? I'll show you underneath our rig. And again, I've had some mods done to it and I've cleaned up some of the rust, but there is a lot of rust on the bottom of our rig. Eventually, that rust is gonna get to the point where it's gonna get the car rotten. And that's not what you want. As you can see, the lower control arm there definitely has looked a little worse for wear. The subframe has got rust spots on it. These air springs here have the new tandem airbag spacers, and the airbag spacers are already starting to rust. And then we'll go to the front of the rig. You can see the front subframe has got some rust on it. And the rust isn't too bad on my rig, but for only being 10 years old, this is too much rust. Like, I don't like this. And so I had to spend a lot of money replacing those lower control arms, replacing the coilovers, and replacing the upper control arms. Number 4 reason why you might want to reconsider getting a second gen Sequoia for your overland rig is there's no rear locker. because this car likes to put a front wheel in the air, you really need more traction in the rear than this car can give you. Yes, there's A-track, yes, there's 4-low, but a rear locker should be mandatory on this rig. It doesn't come with this rig. So you have to go out and you have to buy a rear locker. A rig that you're gonna take on hard trails that's already limited by double wishbone suspension, it's extra limited if it doesn't have a locker, and these don't have a locker. So there's another reason why you might wanna skip out on getting a Sequoia as your overland rig. This has the weakest alignment tabs I've ever had on any car in my entire life. I've gone off-roading in this rig probably 5 times. And all 5 times, I've had to come back home and get a new alignment. And here's the problem with that. Because this car has double wishbone suspension, it has eccentric bolts on all 4 corners. That means you have to adjust the camber, the caster, and the toe on all 4 corners. It's such a pain in the ass. Throw on top of that these are super duper weak. This makes this car a horrible choice for overlanding. The weak alignment tabs can totally be fixed with something like this, which is an alignment cam tab gusset. Total Chaos makes them, a lot of people make them. And if you're like me, you like working on your rig and you want an excuse to weld, then sure, you can fix the weak tabs with something like this. But let me show you what happens if you don't fix the tabs. The tabs themselves only will allow for so many adjustments over time before the tabs bend and come off. Those are the factory alignment cam tabs. I've upgraded those alignment bolts with some SPC bolts. They're a bit bigger hardware, but you can see the eccentric plate on the bolt is actually not touching the inner tab, and the inner tab there has some spot welds on it to keep it in place. The outer tab, which is kind of hard to see from this angle, the outer tab has been bent out from these factory Toyota tabs being super weak. The way you fix that is taking that alignment alignment tab gusset, removing it all together and putting in a new one. For me, this is a real big deal. It's not only the safety of the rig that jeopardizes myself and my family, the alignment of the rig, but it's also honestly not acceptable. Let me show you what it should look like on the other side. All right, you see that cam tab right there? That's what it should look like. The cam tab is touching both sides of the alignment plate. There's just a matter of time before that fails, and if that does fail, I'm gonna get funky toe on the rear of the rig, which is honestly unacceptably dangerous. You're probably thinking to yourself, well, don't they make lockout eccentric bolts? They do, but you don't want to run those in the rear of your rig because the rear toe needs to be down to the degree. And if you have this rear alignment off in any way, shape, or form, you're gonna have a bad day. Now you can use those lockout bolts in the front, and I'll show you what the front of our Sequoia looks like. And if your eccentric bolts look anything like mine, they're probably a little cattywampus. One is pointed up over here, one is pointed to the side over here.
I wasn't talking to you, Deeds. I was talking to that squirrel over there.
And just so you know, when I aligned this car, they were perfect. This is just from one trail ride. So yeah, you could use lockout bolts in the front. You might be wondering to yourself, Mike, why are you bagging on the car that you own and telling us not to buy this thing? Well, you can still find some Toyota Sequoias for a good deal. And if you're trying to just make this the family hauler that looks cool and has a little bit more capability, then yeah, this is a good car for you. If you're trying to have a heavy-duty overlander that is very capable and can get you through really hard stuff, this is not the car for you. If you're saying to yourself, well, there's a TRD Pro Sequoia, and that should have all the ability built in, it doesn't. And that car, even used, is between 40 and 60 grand, something maybe even higher. At that point, just get a 200 series Land Cruiser. It's way more capable in every way. It has almost the same amount of space, and it just feels way nicer. But if you're on a budget and you're just looking for a family cruiser, this probably could fit the bill. It's basically just a lifted minivan at this point, but hey, we have it, and I'm gonna make the most of it. If you have reasons why your Sequoia is a piece of junk, or If you think I'm full of it and all my reasons are bad, let me know in the comments below. Until then, thanks so much for watching. Make sure you like, make sure you comment, make sure you subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Thanks. Bye.